The place is very unexpected because you drive from Donnini, a little village, on a very uncomfortable road. You get through a wood, and then there is a wall. There's a wall covered with leaves, and somewhere in the wall a little door, and maybe on the door there's Beatrice waiting for you. And then you enter, and it's very unexpected. It's something that I try to do in my movies, which is to go for something which apparently is a bit, let's say, low-key, with a mystery, and then suddenly you enter in the world of Grisha and Beatrice, which is full of books, writer who made the books, writer who are writing the books, little dogs here and there, a beautiful field behind the house, which goes on a kind of belvedere where you can see a very wild part of Tuscany.
Innumerable words of poems and novels have been written here at Santa Maddalena, a heaven secluded deep in the Tuscan hills. The writer Gregor Rezzori, author of Memoirs of an Anti-Semite, The Death of My Brother Abel, and many other novels, lived and worked here for 30 years until his death in 1998. His wife, Beatrice Monti della Corte, has continued in the spirit of her husband's generous hospitality to friends and fellow artists by turning the house into a writer's retreat in the year 2000. It is as if Rezzori has never left. To these days, the place still breathes an atmosphere that inspires writing and the exchange of ideas.
Magic is a term that's so overused as to have become almost meaningless, and yet when I got to Santa Maddalena, it did feel quite literally magical. I am not an especially portable writer. I don't write in hotel rooms, I don't write on airplanes, I write in the room in which I write, and I was slightly apprehensive about going to Santa Maddalena, as I would have been apprehensive about going anywhere, really. What if I get there and I find I just, for mysterious reasons, can't work there? And I arrived. I bowed down in awe to the beauty of the place. I was shown to my impossibly lovely room. I had the top 2 floors of the signal tower. Set my laptop down on the desk. There was about an hour until dinner, and I started writing, which I never do. It was actually a little, it was fabulous and slightly upsetting. I thought, what? Stop! You can't do this. You need days to settle in before you can start to write anything. And really, I just felt in the presence of something. And I wrote a third of this novel in under 4 weeks.
Writers from all over the world, but especially American writers, find something here that has long since disappeared in the outside world. An encounter with other writers, often from different cultures, but with the same purpose and passions. In Tuscany, this has been a tradition since the Renaissance. This alone makes Santa Maddalena different from all other literary foundations. To be invited to Santa Maddalena for a 6 weeks fellowship is an honor. A close friend of the Rezzoris, Bruce Chatwin, who wrote here for long stretches between his journeys, established the tradition.
Bruce believed in a movement, and he believed to work in somewhere which possibly belonged to other people. He liked it better than to be on his, usually writer wants their own desk, their own chair, there's pen always in the right position. It was not like that. He was creating his ambiance wherever he went. Bruce was part of the sort of strange environment that house suggests. He was coming back and back again. And he also wrote an article which is part now of I think it's a collection of stories called What Am I Doing Here?, where he did explain why it was so good to work here and why he had the regrets not being there wherever else he was. And so we start thinking that really this was a place blessed for the writer in some way. And that helped me very much when Grisha died to think, we should sort of organize that in some way, make it more legal, and receive writers, not that many, but with a certain sense of largesse, because, if you you change it into little rooms and it becomes, institution. It's not good. So the life continued to be bizarre, but with an enormous respect for the time of the writer and their freedom. They do exactly what they want. They just have to appear to the meal, that's all. And yes, it was in a way Bruce's model that continued.
And this is how, time and again, encounters are made that broaden horizons. Here, Russians meet Irishmen, Americans meet authors from India and South America. But there are also filmmakers, actors, publishers, who visit for an evening and bring new sources of inspiration.
I'd never been to a place like Santa Maddalena before, and I was introduced to Beatrice and Grisha when I was filming The English Patient. We were filming, I think, in Via Reggio, and on a Sunday when we were not working, we drove over, and I remember the journey down the track to the house and being greeted by Grisha and Beatrice, and this extraordinary atmosphere of this hidden jewel of a house on this Tuscan hillside. I remember the charm of Grisha and Beatrice, and I remember this extraordinary atmosphere, unique, a concentration of energy that two people had created in one house. Beautiful things, beautiful objects, but a place where you immediately felt that the rest of the world disappeared, and something like a sanctuary, it felt like.
I've finished in longhand, but I'm typing at the moment because I work in longhand. A short story about a small town in Ireland in 1967, and it couldn't be further away from here. It's October. It's a bad October. It's raining and there's wind. The emotions in it are very small, tiny, melancholy things. There are no great churches or great buildings. The building I'm describing is a small house with a galvanized iron roof with 4 small rooms in it. It couldn't be any different. So they're moving from this beautiful house and this beautiful landscape and going to Florence and coming back here into what's in here. Oddly enough, you get much greater power. You can concentrate much more on that thing when you don't have it around you.
American writers who come to Santa Maddalena not only love the beauty of the place, they also appreciate discovering the rich history of this part of Europe, as well as the dialogue with writers from other parts of the world.
America is tremendously insular and very much turned in on itself. Every time I travel to another country, I'm introduced to their major writers, many of whom I don't know about, many of whom are not translated. And it is of tremendous importance for American artists, American writers, to have a sense of the larger world, which is almost impossible to have while in America. You really have to go out into the larger world. And one of the fantastic things about being at Santa Maddalena was meeting other people who were not American, who lived lives, and of course Beatrice, who lived other lives in other places and had common but other concerns.
And democracy.
I think you feel when you're here that you're not, especially in Tuscany, in any narrow sense, but that you're in Europe in some very broad sense. I mean, just looking at the books on the shelves, they're in every language. The place itself is so physically beautiful, too, without being pretentious.
You know, one of the members of the Nobel Committee sort of raised a lot of hackles in America when he said something to the effect that American writers are too parochial, are too concerned with with American lives and American troubles to be really interesting around the world. And of course, American writers were not happy to hear that. I wasn't happy to hear it, but I have to say, I understand what he was talking about.
Once a year, the Santa Maddalena Foundation awards the Gregor von Rezzori Vallombrosa International Prize for a foreign work of fiction published in Italian, an occasion which draws a crowd of world-renowned authors, literati, and society figures.
She put me in the tower, which is Bruce Chatwin's tower, and they had the top room which looks over the entire valley. And I was very, I'm very suburban by nature. I'm from a small bit of London and I hadn't travelled that much. And to open that window every day and you can see a kind of Moorish castle in the distance and the forest of fir trees and the beautiful valley was incredible. And then I just started work, and it was like all things when you're away from home. I was writing about London, but to be away from London makes it much easier. The feeling of nostalgia comes back much more easily. And then I would sleep every day in the room below it, which is particularly beautiful. It's a pink bedroom with candy-striped wallpaper, like a Parisian bedroom for a child or something, really beautiful. And my work came very quickly, much more quickly than I'd imagined. And just for an English person also, the feeling of being in Italy is a great relief. You know, Italy's a traditional relief for English writers, for Keats or for Shelley or for Forster. It's a place where you can be English, but more so. Everything is extended. The food is better, the weather is better, literature is has more looseness and less formality. So I think it was under the influence of all those things that writing became easier. The first time I was here, I was with two Canadian writers, a couple, and we had completely opposite sensibilities. They were Beckett fans, so fans of minimalist prose. I'm at the other end, I love Nabokov. So it was a constant series of literary arguments, which was good. Other times I've been here with people who are molto simpatica to me, so Michael Cunningham or John Banville or Peter Esterhazy, where your taste is similar. So every lunchtime is a kind of delighted discussion of the books you love and the things you like to do, and some exchange of work as well. And also to find out writers' secret talents, like Cunningham's a great swimmer, or Banville likes a good song. Or you find out that people are more than just their writing. So that's beautiful. But mainly it's a chance to be friendly with writers instead of in dread of them. You know, writers are naturally jealous and cruel to each other. But when you're faced with another one, when you have to live with them for 6 weeks, you have to become friendly, and you have to be sympathetic with them and to understand them. And that's a great experience. I've made a lot of friendships here that have lasted.
The hospitality of a private house and the art of the salon, long vanished elsewhere, contributes to the unique atmosphere of Santa Maddalena. Here, the meals are still prepared following traditional Tuscan recipes, using the produce of the garden, the oil of the olive grove, the way Gregor Rezzori loved to do. On some evenings, friends of the house come, among them publishers, actors, painters. Everyone is curious to meet the current residents of Santa Maddalena. Thoughts are exchanged, friendships are formed.
Should be taken very seriously as a retreat for writers to interact and to work. And I think it's a place of work, and a place of it's a beautiful place. There's no question. But I think essentially it's a place where writers confront the blank page, and you can't. Atmospheres are hard things to describe; they're things to be experienced. But I do think that the as we say in English, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And I think that we've seen substantial works by writers come out of this unique place. And I think that if we are to take writing seriously in an age where everything is being made into shorthand and made glib, and I think often shallow and easy, I think that we have to protect a place like Santa Maddalena.
There is nothing like Santa Maddalena. In some places you go and you feel like you have to write a story there. In some ways, Santa Maddalena is a story. It's an active place that has an amazing history, that has been dedicated so successfully to writers getting their craft done. I had a very difficult novel I was writing about some corrupt businessmen in Eastern Europe, and I came to Santa Maddalena. I couldn't get a handle on this book, and within the first few weeks of living in the same space where I knew Bruce Chatwin had worked, where his own travels had become the beautiful prose that he had written, it took me almost no time to start writing this book. And in the middle of, after 6 weeks, I felt myself sitting around with all these different characters around me, imaginary characters, and at the same time channeling the energy of the people who had actually been there, people like Bruce Chatwin and of course Gregor von Rezzori, who had worked so wonderfully there as well. There is nothing like it in terms of getting very good, very atmospheric work done. And I think what happens especially that's interesting to me is the way Americans come alive when they see this place, when they see a place that's not just the old cliche of a European place steeped in history, but something that's alive, that's full of energy, that's full of vitality, and that attracts some of the more interesting writers in the world from around the world.
If there is an historian, one day will trace that bits and pieces. I know it's not so much in a world which is in so disastrous circumstances, but at the same time, you know, if you have incredibly intelligent people who can work in freedom and in community at the same time, here, I think it's a little tassel of something which has to be preserved.
I think that the Santa Maddalena needs to be there. I think it's absolutely necessary that it becomes an institution that, regardless of who is there, that it's always there for the writers, for people with ideas to come and sit and talk and express those ideas, whether it's in plays or nonfiction or in fiction. I had such a good time at Santa Maddalena, and I had such a great experience that I can't imagine not wanting other people 20, 30, 40 years down the line to also have that experience.
The Santa Maddalena Foundation has become one of the most important places in the world for great writers and emerging literary talents, each of whom carried the unique spirit of the place with them forever after.